Orpheus, the novelist, is one of the players in the Manor Game during the Ashes of Memory arc. He joins the game alongside Frederick, Alice, Norton, and Melly, which are characters we've already talked about. So today, we're focusing on Orpheus, and we'll also be wrapping up the Ashes of Memory's character's backstory, which marks the final game of the Manor Game series. Many of you probably already know that Orpheus is heavily hinted to be the mastermind behind all the Manor games that took place at Oletus Manor. But perhaps not many people really know why he did it, and perhaps even fewer know what exactly happened at Oletus before, during, and after the games. That's why in this video, we're going to dive into Orpheus's story from his early life all the way to the point where he joined the Manor Game in Ashes of Memory. As always, I've done my best to piece everything together, but there aren't many confirmed facts about Orpheus. His memories are unclear, and since he once tried to take on someone else's identity, we can't even be sure if the things he says are true. So please keep in mind that this is just a theory based on the information we have so far. Nothing is 100% confirmed unless NetEase officially says so. In Identity 5, Orpheus's identity remains quite a mystery. Aside from his recently revealed family name, Blanche, we still don't know his real full name. The name Orpheus isn't even his actual name. It's something he started using during his childhood. So, in a way, his true identity is still hidden. The name Orpheus comes from the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. In the story, Orpheus is a gifted musician who falls in love with Eurydice. Tragically, she dies on their wedding day after being bitten by a snake. Heartbroken, Orpheus travels to the underworld to bring her back. He plays such beautiful music that Hades and Persephone agree to let Eurydice return to the living world on one condition. Orpheus must not look back at her until they're both out of the underworld. Sadly, just before they escape, Orpheus looks back, and Eurydice is lost forever. This myth meant a lot to Orpheus as a child. He used to recite it together with his childhood friend, Alice. Even Alice only ever called him Orphe, and not even from her point of view do we learn his real name. But that might be because her memories are also unclear due to the human experiments she went through. As many of you know, several Identity 5 characters are inspired by real historical figures. Alice de Ross, for example, is believed to be based on Nellie Bly, a groundbreaking American journalist. That got me thinking, could Orpheus be inspired by a real-life writer from the Victorian era? After some digging, two names stood out: Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Edgar Allan Poe. Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, had a troubled father and a background in medicine, much like Orpheus's own mysterious past and connection to poisons like Atropa belladonna. Even the name James Reichenbach, who hires Orpheus, might reference Reichenbach Falls, the site of Holmes's final showdown with Moriarty. Then there's Poe, known for his dark, haunting literature. Both Poe and Orpheus had absent or troubled fathers, and both lost their mothers to lung-related illnesses. Tuberculosis for Poe, and likely lung cancer for Orpheus's mother. Their somber, introspective natures also feel eerily alike. Some even speculate a connection to Hans Christian Andersen, since he and Orpheus share the same birthday, April 2nd. While Orpheus is clearly named after the mythical Greek figure, the rest of his inspiration remains uncertain. Until NetEase confirms anything, all we can do is keep theorizing and watching for clues. When Ashes of Memory took place in July 1902, Orpheus was 24 years old. Since his birthday is on April 2nd, we can figure out that he was born on April 2nd, 1878. According to Bain's sixth letter, Orpheus's full surname is Blanche. That surname originates from France, which has led many fans to believe that Orpheus might be of French descent. However, this is just a theory, since there's been no official confirmation from Netties so far. Around the time Orpheus was born, rumors were already starting to spread about a certain manor in Glasgow, Scotland. This manor would later become the infamous Oletus Manor. It was said to have a dark past, dating all the way back to the 16th century. According to what Orpheus said in the character's affection system, it was built by a decorated naval officer who had earned his title through bloodshed. Because his honor came from violence, many believed the manor was cursed from the very beginning. Over the years, nearly every owner of the manor, along with their families, met tragic ends, further fueling the manor's grim reputation. Eventually, the manor fell into disrepair. People began to avoid the area entirely, and the land around it became deserted. Despite all the superstitions, the manor caught the attention of a young artistic couple, Denis de Ross and his wife. They were drawn in, not by the manor's history, but by the stunning natural scenery and peaceful surroundings. As artists who had spent some time influenced by the ideals of the New World, they didn't care much for rumors or curses. For them, the manor's isolation and beauty made it the perfect place to focus on their art. According to Bain's backstory and details from the manor's backstory, we can assume that Alice was born a year after the de Ross couple moved into the manor. Since Alice was born in 1881, that would mean the de Ross family moved in around 1880. At that time, Orpheus was just 2 years old. He moved to Oletus Manor with his parents, who were hired by Denis de Ross, most likely to be a forest ranger. But even before Orpheus's parents joined the manor staff, 2 important people were already working there: Bain Perez, head of the forest rangers, and Burke Lapadura, the manor's chief architect. As a curious little kid, Orpheus was really interested in Burke's work. He would often sneak peeks into Burke's workshop, watching him build and invent things. This got on Burke's nerves. He found Orpheus annoying. But according to Burke's deduction story, even though he acted annoyed, deep down he didn't really mind. There are a lot of hints that he actually cared about Orpheus and was secretly happy to have him around. To help with his work, Burke tried building a robot. He failed 25 times, but on the 26th try, he finally got it right. That's why he called the robot number 26. At first, the robot was meant to help with construction, but later it was also given other tasks like looking after the kids and guarding the manor. Eventually, this robot became known as Bon Bon. Back to the kids. So in 1881, a year after the de Ross family moved in, Mistress de Ross gave birth to Alice. At that time, Orpheus was 3 years old. Since the manor was in a pretty remote place with no other kids around, Orpheus and Alice naturally became close friends. They grew up playing together all around the manor, and sometimes even wandered into the forest. The forest was known to be dangerous, with poachers showing up from time to time. Because of that, Bain asked Burke to create a device to protect the forest and the kids from any threats. Burke was somewhat pleased when Alice came along, mostly because she distracted Orpheus from constantly bothering him, but he still got irritated when Alice started messing with number 26 and gave it the name Bon Bon. In Burke's mind, robots didn't need names or personalities, they just needed to do what they were programmed to do. He tried reprogramming the robot, but it kept repeating the name Bon Bon, no matter what. Besides exploring the forest together, Orpheus and Alice also spent a lot of time playing games like hide and seek or making music. But the one thing that had the biggest impact on their story was their shared love for the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. They used to recite that story together often, and that's actually where the name Orpheus comes from. As mentioned earlier, Orpheus isn't his real name. It's a pseudonym inspired by his childhood. Orpheus showed a talent for writing even as a child. He often wrote short stories and would later read them aloud to Alice. It's also suggested that Denis Diderot, Alice's father, was fond of Orpheus. There's even a photograph showing Denis, his wife, Orpheus, and both of Orpheus's parents all together. That moment hints at a time when their families were close and Orpheus was welcomed warmly into the Diderot household. It's not exactly clear when it began, but during the time of reunion storyline, we get hints that Orpheus's mother was seriously ill.
His mother's condition is worse, and maybe we can help them.
Child.
In a separate file, her illness is identified as lung cancer, and it seems her condition was only getting worse over time. The people around the manor were clearly concerned. Even the Diderot family, close to Orpheus during his childhood, considered whether they should step in to help, but in the end, it's unclear if they ever actually did. Desperate to save his wife, Orpheus's father borrowed a large sum of money. The man he borrowed from is believed to be a loan shark, and the amount was likely enormous. At first, the money went toward getting her treatment at a high-end private clinic, probably in hopes that better care would lead to a cure. But when that didn't work, and the money started to run out, they had no choice but to move her to a mission hospital instead. According to Bane's sixth letter and Orpheus's second letter, despite everything they tried, her health never improved. For Orpheus's father, this was devastating. Not only was time running out to save his wife, but the weight of the debt he owed became unbearable. And that's when things took a dark turn. With no other options left, Orpheus's father came up with a terrible plan. He would raid the manor to get the money he needed. There's no solid proof of how he carried it out, but from scattered bits of lore, it's believed he made contact with a group of bandits, outsiders, likely not from the neighboring towns.
They encountered some strangers in the woods. City folks?
Doesn't seem like it.
These bandits were armed with firearms, which makes some fans speculate they might have been part of Joaquin's old crew. Though, again, that's just a theory. From the time of reunion scenes, we know that the bandits were first spotted by manor workers in the forest, mistaken at first for lost travelers. The forest around Oletus Manor is known to be nearly impossible for outsiders to navigate. In fact, Alice herself once mentioned that people often get lost in it. So for these bandits to make it through and successfully raid the manor, they had to have someone guiding them from the inside, and that person was likely Orpheus's father. There's also a key piece of information from both time of reunion and the recent interaction events. Denis Diderot had once given Orpheus a piccolo, but it wasn't just a musical instrument. It was actually a special key that could unlock every door inside the manor. At some point, Orpheus's father found out about it and got his hands on it, and that's when the nightmare began. In 1887, sometime around April or May, a young Orpheus was walking alone in the forest. But when he tried to return home, he suddenly realized the piccolo, the key was gone. Panic set in. He rushed back to the manor, only to find a horrifying scene. it had been ransacked by bandits. Inside, he discovered the lifeless bodies of Alice's parents. Somehow, he managed to find Alice and comfort her. He promised they'd see each other again.
Shh! Don't be afraid. We'll meet again.
But before they could escape, the bandits found them and took them both away. After the raid, Alice was eventually sent to the White Sand Street Asylum. Orpheus, however, took a different path. That moment shattered him, and in the aftermath, something inside him changed. The trauma gave rise to the darker side of Orpheus, the side that would one day lead him back to the manor, no longer as a child, but as a man with a new face, a new name, and a much more haunting purpose. The time of reunion event, along with the banquet of vanity's essences, offers us subtle yet compelling clues about what happened to Orpheus after the devastating Manor Incident. In time of reunion, Orpheus confesses something deeply personal, that after that one tragic day, he lost his original self, and in its place, something else was born. But what is this other self? And what purpose does it serve? To find answers, we can look deeper into the Banquet of Vanity's lore. One of the key lines reads that the island was his paradise, and that paradise was destroyed by outsiders. This mirrors the events of the Manor raid, when bandits tore through Orpheus's peaceful world and shattered everything he once held dear. But the most striking phrase comes soon after. Since all misery and darkness came because of him, and all beauty and happiness ended because of him, then it is also because of him that everything begins anew. These words hint that Orpheus's other self is born not just from trauma, but from guilt. Guilt that he couldn't prevent the tragedy. Guilt that he survived it. This new self becomes fixated on a singular goal: to restore everything that was lost. Later in the Essence Files, we're told, the Holy Supper has come. Each guest will usher in their own ending. And the novelist parachuted here to rebuild the paradise. It's poetic and chilling. Orpheus, now metaphorically parachuted into a twisted banquet of his own making, becomes the novelist, a man on a mission not just to rewrite stories, but to rewrite reality. Moreover, this theme becomes even clearer when we examine Orpheus's S-tier skin in Banquet of Vanities, hollow. The skin's lore states, chaos and decay require the establishment of a new order, and this is exactly the mission of the novelist. This reveals the novelist's purpose directly: to bring order out of chaos, to rebuild what was broken, even if it means manipulating reality itself. But how does Orpheus plan to rebuild this paradise? We know his life has always revolved around Alice. After the incident, not only were they torn apart, but Alice was deeply traumatized and later institutionalized, suffering from mental instability due to a fire incident. To Orpheus, paradise could only exist if Alice was happy, if she could forget the horrors of their shared past. And that leads to a bold, morally ambiguous theory. What if Orpheus tried to erase Alice's memory of the Manor Incident altogether? There are hints throughout Identity 5 that suggest this was exactly what Orpheus set out to do. Based on the deduction star quotes, his in-game interactions, and especially the lies he tells Alice in Ashes of Memory, it really feels like he wanted to switch their roles. To make Alice believe that she was never the daughter of the Duras family, but that he was instead. By doing this, Orpheus would carry the pain of the tragedy alone, and Alice would live on without the crushing grief of knowing her parents were the ones who died in the raid. But pulling off something that extreme would take more than just storytelling. It would take science, medicine, and a lot of money. And that's where characters like Count Barriere, Sam Bourbon, and others start to feel more important. These names don't seem random. In fact, Count Barriere is actually listed as one of the sponsors of the Manor Game, which suggests that there was a whole network of wealthy supporters behind this project. So maybe the Manor Game wasn't just some personal mission Orpheus took on by himself. It could have been a carefully planned operation, backed by people who either believed in his goal or had something to gain from it. Sam Bourbon made a famous drink called Dublin, which is implied to be able to change one's mood or emotion. Still, he never let his stepsister Demi try it, which makes us wonder, was there something special or even dangerous in it? This connects to Orpheus, who was trying to create medicine for Alice. Maybe Dublin's secret ingredients gave Orpheus ideas for his experiments. We can't say for sure, but it's an interesting possibility. Still, even with the right tools and funding, Orpheus couldn't do everything on his own. He needed help from people who understood the manor and its past. That's where Burke, Bane, and Bonbon come in. These three weren't just any characters. They were former staff at the manor back when the Duras family still lived there. Somehow, they survived the raid in 1887. Whether they stayed through everything or returned later for their own reasons, we don't really know. But one way or another, they ended up helping Orpheus. They joined the Manor Game, not as players, but as staff. Their presence alone suggests they were deeply involved in keeping everything running behind the scenes. When you start to put all these pieces together, the Manor Game stops looking like just a mysterious survival competition. It starts to feel like something way more intentional, a long-term psychological experiment built around Orpheus's desire to rebuild what was taken from him. And so, Orpheus began developing a series of drugs, all of which are mentioned throughout Identity 5. These experimental medicines were designed to do some pretty heavy things: erase memories, cause hallucinations, and even prevent overdose. It's a terrifying combination, especially when you realize these weren't just theoretical. He was actively testing them. Then there's another drug, ones that's said to rebuild memory. What that means exactly is still kind of a mystery. Could it restore memories that were erased? Or is it meant to implant new ones altogether, constructing a false version of the past? I've looked into it a lot, and honestly, I still don't have a clear answer. But what I do believe is that Orpheus was trying to carefully reconstruct Alice's mind, piece by piece, until she became the person he needed her to be. And of course, no experiment like this could happen without test runs. That's the most chilling part of all. The Manor Game wasn't just a backdrop. It was a massive, carefully controlled test. A trial to see if his memory-altering drugs worked before he ever used them on Alice. And the people drawn into the manor? They became his test subjects. Aside from the experiments, it's also mentioned that Orpheus eventually rises to fame as a novelist, specifically in the horror genre. In Ashes of Memory, Orpheus reveals that he began writing as a way to escape reality, that he couldn't trust anyone, and writing became his only refuge. Over time, this coping mechanism turned into a career, earning him recognition in the literary world. Perhaps this is what ultimately shaped his role as a novelist within the game's story. In the end, Orpheus isn't just a detective, or a novelist, or a grieving childhood friend. He's something far more complicated. For many, he's a nightmare. He's a man caught between guilt and obsession, a man who lost everything and is willing to cross any line to get it back, even if it means rewriting the truth, rebuilding memories, and turning people into pawns, all in the name of restoring a paradise that once was. From Emma's 6th letter, Ada's and Emil's birthday letters, and the 10 Days of Memories event back in 2022, we can start to piece together a timeline. According to these clues, the Manor Game officially began in early 1896. The first known group, often referred to as the Control Group, included Ada, Emil, Helena, Galatea, and an unknown 5th participant. The purpose of this initial round seems to have been to test and refine Orpheus's experimental medicine, which is the same one he eventually hoped to use on Alice. This testing cycle continued, over and over, perfecting the drug little by little, and all of it was leading toward one goal: saving Alice. Then, in 1902, things changed. After a long string of misfortunes, Alice finally returned to the manor. By this time, she was 21 years old and working as a journalist. Orpheus, who seems to have been watching and waiting for this moment all along, made his move. He joined the game himself, officially stepping into the manor as a participant. This marked the beginning of the final game, Ashes of Memory. What exactly happened during and after Ashes of Memory can be found in its storyline, specifically in Part 1 and Part 2, as well as in the follow-up event, Time of Reunion. Those events have already passed, but you can still find traces of them. Some documents are available on the Identity V wiki, and much of the story can be revisited through the in-game archives or event menu. That being said, I want to make it clear, nothing I've said here is confirmed to be 100% canon. These are just theories, ones I've built by studying the lore, talking with other lore enthusiasts, and connecting incomplete pieces to form the most plausible explanation. So please don't take this as fact. Instead, see it as a way to explore possibilities, to question what we think we know about the Manor Game. If you're curious to learn more, I definitely encourage you to explore the files and events yourself. The way Identity V handles its lore is very deliberate, slow, subtle, and full of mystery. It's meant to make us question everything and keep us guessing. If you've got theories of your own or want to add context I might have missed, feel free to drop them in the comments. Thanks for watching. Silmina signing off.